This week on The Inside Story, $95 billion in foreign aid approved by the United States Congress and signed by President Joe Biden. See how we got here and who's getting the money. In its third year fighting a Russian invasion, parts of Ukraine are now littered with landmines. Plus, the role of artificial intelligence in the coming election in this week's installment of USA Votes 2024. Now, on The Inside Story, politics, U.S. aid, and war.
Welcome to The Inside Story. I'm Elizabeth Lee. After months, even years of bitter divide, a moment of bipartisan cooperation at the United States Capitol. Lawmakers in the House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed a $95 billion aid bill. It's since gone through the Senate to the White House, where President Biden this week signed the aid package that features spending for Ukraine, Israel, Gaza relief, and the Indo-Pacific region. VOA's congressional correspondent, Katherine Gibson, starts us off.
Urgently needed ammunition and supplies. Soon on their way to Ukraine after months of waiting. U.S. President Joe Biden signing a bill Wednesday, sending more than $60 billion in aid to Ukraine.
This package is literally an investment, not only in Ukraine's security, but in Europe's security.
Ukrainian lawmakers are expecting a fast delivery now that funding has been approved.
The logistics for the shipments was already well established. Normally it takes not more than 48 hours to actually come to the front lines.
Meanwhile, Russia downplayed the impact the long-awaited weapons will have on the two-year-old conflict.
All these new batches of weapons, which are probably already ready, will not change the dynamics at the front.
After months of debate over American involvement in foreign conflicts, the U.S. Senate overwhelmingly approved the legislation by a vote of 79 to 18 late Tuesday. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell worked closely with Democratic counterpart Chuck Schumer to pass the aid.
We tell our allies, we stand with you. We tell our adversaries, don't mess with us. We tell the world, the United States will do everything to safeguard democracy.
The measure gained significantly more Republican support after former President Donald Trump scaled back his criticism of sending more aid. The legislation also includes $26 billion in aid to Israel and $8 billion in funding to Taiwan and other Indo-Pacific countries to counter Chinese aggression. China condemned that aid early Wednesday.
We urge the U.S. side to honor its commitment of not supporting Taiwan independence with concrete actions and stop arming Taiwan in any way.
The legislation also includes a provision forcing TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to divest ownership of the social media app within 1 year or face a ban in the United States. Katherine Gibson, VOA News.
News of the U.S. approving a nearly $61 billion aid package for Ukraine comes as the country expects a Russian assault this summer. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the assistance vital in a post on Telegram. But as Anna Chernikova reports from Kyiv, there is some concern that $10 billion of that aid is in the form of a loan, leaving a cash-strapped nation on the hook for repayment.
Approval of America's $60 billion aid package to Ukraine brought hope to people on the streets of Kyiv as they brace for a Russian assault expected in a few weeks. Many here had worried the U.S. was abandoning them. They did not want their last names used for security reasons.
I'm very glad that this issue has finally been moved forward. Finally, there will be help for Ukraine from the U.S. This brings joy. I think that any Ukrainian will tell you that this was a very critical issue.
There will be more help, more equipment. We will win faster. Faster, the peace will come without war, without losses, without grief.
People say they are grateful to the American people after weeks of tension made worse by a delay in the aid's passage.
Of course there are positive emotions. We've been waiting for this for a very long time. Of course we're grateful to them, Americans, for providing us with weapons. I wish it will get to our soldiers at the front line as fast as possible.
After the package cleared its first hurdle in the U.S. House of Representatives, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked American lawmakers, saying the aid will benefit both Ukraine and the United States.
We appreciate every sign of support for our country and its independence, people and way of life, which Russia is attempting to bury under the rubble. America has demonstrated its leadership since the first days of this war. Exactly this type of leadership is required to maintain a rules-based international order and predictability for all nations.
Military analysts here say the U.S. aid, which includes long-range missiles, could be a game-changer on the battlefield. Alexander Musienko, head of the Center for Military Legal Studies, says U.S. support, including advanced long-range guided missiles called ATACMS, is critical as Ukraine is running short on weapons and ammunition.
Russian troops are preparing to intensify their offensive in the east, and the Ukrainian troops really need additional weapons, additional ammunition, projectiles. We need ATACMS to restrain this offensive.
Musienko and others believe chances have increased significantly for Ukrainian forces when they face the Russian offensive that's expected in the coming months. Washington's aid package to Ukraine consists largely of loans, which has touched off an intense debate in Ukraine. The country is already struggling with a national debt that has reached $145 billion, up from nearly $90 billion at the start of the war. Some economists and politicians are raising questions of how and when Ukraine will be able to pay it all back. These are desperate times for Ukraine, and for many Ukrainians, what's most important is the money is coming now. Anna Chernikova, VOA News, Kyiv.
Of the $26 billion worth of aid to Israel in this new package, about half is direct military assistance. Meanwhile, university campuses across the United States see daily protests by students and teachers demanding a ceasefire and humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. Police jailed several demonstrators and organizations suspended students. Despite that, protests persist. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has the story.
Pro-Palestinian students protest at Columbia University in New York, even as administrators call for the dismantling of encampments. Negotiations on how to disperse the crowd are underway.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Last Thursday, more than 100 students were arrested at universities across the country. The protests come at a time when school administrators are being urged to clamp down on anti-Semitism. VOA witnessed firsthand the aftermath of Thursday's arrests at Columbia University. One protester, who declined to give her name, laid out some of the students' demands.
I'm here to demand immediate ceasefire along with my other comrades so we can get humanitarian aid to Gaza.
Architecture professor Mary McLeod expressed her views on measures being taken to handle the demonstrations.
I don't know why they had to bring in the cops, put handcuffs on students, and why they can't accept a few tents where the students were totally peaceful.
A Columbia student who identified herself as Argentinian Jewish saw it differently.
It's very scary. I can't concentrate during the class because they're screaming all day. I'm scared to say that I'm Jewish because I don't know, they're extremists. They were holding pictures and supporting Hamas.
Protests have continued to spread to other campuses in the United States. On Tuesday, a tent camp was erected at the University of California, Berkeley in a show of support for those arrested at Columbia and Yale universities on Monday. In the nation's capital, students at the American University protested internal policies they say resulted from the pro-Palestinian demonstrations nationwide and already curtailed their freedom of expression.
It's a new policy, a new directive, which banned indoor protest, which AU has a long history of having indoor protests. It also restricted flyering and what type of materials can be posted around campus and who can do it.
In a statement to VOA, the American University said the directives were implemented to support the safety and sense of belonging for students, and that it will continue to support the rights and responsibilities of free expression. Politicians have also weighed in. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson called for the resignation of the president of Columbia University, Manoush Shafik, during a visit to the campus on Wednesday. On Tuesday, House Minority Leader Democrat Hakeem Jeffries condemned all forms of anti-Semitism and called for a redoubling of efforts to bring communities together. After giving remarks on Earth Day on Monday, President Joe Biden told reporters he condemns anti-Semitic protests and, quote, those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians. One expert on religion and conflict says academic institutions need places where students can have meaningful discussions.
One needs to be very careful about talking about sides and recognize that there are some issues about justice that bring together Jewish, Muslim, Palestinians, Christian students to that space of protest. And indeed, the issue is that there is a deep confusion in how to define anti-Semitism.
Meanwhile, the death toll in Gaza has surpassed more than 34,000, according to Gaza's health ministry. And there's no sign the war between Israel and Hamas is going to end anytime soon. Veronica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
More than 2 years after Russia's full-scale invasion, officials say Ukraine is now one of the most landmine-littered countries in the world. And as Licia Bakalets reports from Kyiv, the scattered landmines go beyond just risk to human lives and limbs. They also impact the environment.
The village of Lipivka in the Kyiv region was occupied by Russians at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The signs indicate there is a minefield they left 300 meters from here. Mine-clearing charity The Halo Trust is working to clear it. The miner Yulia doesn't give her last name for security reasons.
Very carefully, I put my hand at 30 degrees and 60 centimeters forward. If I see something suspicious, similar to a tripwire, I rub it with my fingers. This one is a dry stalk of grass. I feel it with my fingers.
The Kyiv region is one of 3 areas in Ukraine where the Halo Trust is working to clear landmines and other explosives.
With the conflict ongoing and the scale of contamination, it's hard to say precisely, but it's likely that Ukraine is the most contaminated country in the world. So estimates for how long it will take to demine Ukraine range from 10 years to more.
Ukraine's Environment Minister Ruslan Strelets explains the scale of the issue.
25% of the territory of our country is mined or potentially requires study and future demining.
Apart from the mortal danger for people, mines also cause significant damage to the environment, said the minister. Each uncontrolled explosion can cause a forest fire.
We had cases when foresters, receiving information about the start of a forest fire, tried to get to the place of this fire and were blown up by mines. So we cannot even get access to some territories due to the mining.
Explosives also kill animals who cannot be stopped by warning signs. Every explosion, even a controlled one during demining, means heavy metals seep into the soil.
It is important to record the levels of pollution after demining.
This impact on the environment is currently not being tracked. So we encourage this to be changed so that the level of pollution is already taken into account when the land is returned for use.
That is a goal the Halo Trust is working towards with its agricultural team. Environment Minister Strelets says Ukraine's ecosystems represent 30% of the entire biodiversity of Europe. He says demining is the first step in healing the damage. Lesia Bakalets, VOA News, Kyiv.
Elsewhere, a group of activists in Turkey is planning to challenge Israel's naval blockade of Gaza. Several vessels are expected to leave Istanbul carrying aid to the Palestinian territory. A previous mission in 2010 ended in a deadly confrontation. Then Israeli forces intercepted a Turkish group, leading to 10 people killed. From Istanbul, our correspondent Dorian Jones reports there are warnings this attempt may trigger a new crisis.
The Akdeniz will lead the flotilla of 3 ships from Istanbul, carrying more than 5,000 metric tons of aid to Gaza, including medical supplies and food. The flotilla is organized by a coalition of international and Turkish humanitarian groups. They say it's not just about delivering aid, but challenging what they describe as Israel's blockade on Gaza. They want Israel to allow aid to enter from Egypt.
We hope to break the illegal naval blockade of Gaza that Israel has had on it for decades. We hope to certainly bring food, medicines that are needed by the people of Gaza. It's a small drop in the bucket. We're calling for the border of Rafah to be open, where there's tons of food that's waiting.
It's been 14 years since flotilla organizers last tried to break the blockade. The last time, Israeli commandos intercepted the Mavi Marmara, the vessel leading the flotilla. The raid led to the deaths of 10 people. Activists say they are aware of the dangers they face, but say the risk is worth taking, considering the scale of the humanitarian crisis.
We are conscious that it's not a mission without any danger, but the danger and the horror is part of exactly the horror that we want to denounce.
Everyone taking part is having lessons on how to de-escalate a possible confrontation with Israeli forces. There's been no comment from Israeli officials, but analysts warn the risks are real given the tensions in the region.
But obviously, this is a very, very intense time now in Israel. And also, I would be very careful and hope that the authorities are, in both sides, are aware of what they need to do to make sure that this will not escalate into violence.
The flotilla is awaiting permission from Turkish authorities to set sail. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has not mentioned the flotilla publicly, but officials say he discussed humanitarian aid when he met with the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh on Saturday. Israel condemned that meeting. The flotilla organizers say they are looking for international protection. Dorian Jones, VOA News, Istanbul.
In the southern African nation of Eswatini, less than half of the girls there complete secondary education. That's according to UNICEF, with pregnancy and poverty being the major contributing factors. Now, a new mentorship program aims to buck those trends by educating girls in the fields of science and technology. From Enzini, Eswatini, Noko Kayamuzi reports.
I've always wanted to be a cardiologist since I was in grade 6. I like that because it saves lives and it's a risky job, and I like taking risks because being a girl these days is just very hard thing to do because people limit you and tell you can't be this, you can't be that, and I want to prove that wrong.
While some young women have the passion and drive to excel in science, technology, engineering, and math, societal barriers have kept them from reaching their full potential. But through the STEM Sisters Mentorship Program, sponsored by Eswatini's Queen Nozizwe, aspiring civil engineers like Sian Dlamini can learn, grow, and even dream bigger.
I entered my first science competition where I actually competed, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the fact that I was given a problem and was able to solve it. That's what I enjoy the most. And then after that, we had career expos where people who have pursued careers in the science departments came and told us more about their careers. And that's when I realized that I want to do anything under engineering.
As the first female managing director of Eswatini Bank, Queen Nozizwe Gamulela Zulu has worn many hats throughout her career, but her latest role as a driving force behind STEM Sisters could turn out to be the most impactful.
What is important is that we as young professionals, as women that participate in STEM courses or STEM jobs and careers, it is important that we also take time to visit them, to guide them, so that they can see that it is actually doable.
Eswatini girls often miss out on potential careers in engineering, computer science, and medicine. In order to break limiting stereotypes, Mulela Zulu has partnered with WomAnge Eswatini, which promotes women in STEM fields. Nogukanya Musi, VOA Central Asia Division, Menzini, Eswatini.
Before we leave you, an update on USA Votes 2024, where we look at the run-up to this year's presidential election. This time, the role of artificial intelligence in the campaigns. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns has our story.
So far, artificial intelligence in this presidential campaign has been most pronounced in the New Hampshire primary, where thousands of voters received a call from a voice sounding like Joe Biden telling them not to vote.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
The fake voice was made by Louisiana magician Paul Carpenter for $150.
If anybody's looking for some kind of flag, not a false flag, but like a flag, a gameplay flag where something bad happened, and I'm the flag.
U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal says there's no time to wait for another flag.
Disinformation and deepfakes are about to descend on the American public. The form of their arrival will be political ads and other forms of disinformation that are made possible by artificial intelligence. There is a clear and present danger to our democracy.
At a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on AI in this election last week, Senator Josh Hawley said it's time to act.
The dangers of this technology without guardrails and without safety features are becoming painfully apparent. And I think the question now is that are we going to have to watch some catastrophe unfold?
It's already possible to detect calls like the one in New Hampshire, says artificial voice generation developer Zohaib Ahmed.
We believe that AI watermarking technology is a readily available solution that can already check the integrity of audio content.
With that technology in place, what's lacking is regulation, says deepfake detection entrepreneur Ben Coleman.
There's a really nice framework in both national and also state-level regulations in the space. When you upload something on, for example, YouTube, it's checking for a few things. It's checking for violence, it's checking for underage imagery, it's checking for, are you uploading the latest Drake song? That's because of regulations. So to scan for generative media would just be another check within that same flow.
The U.S. Federal Election Commission is considering rules that would prohibit using AI in ads to deliberately deceive voters. New Hampshire Secretary of State David Scanlon told the Senate committee that unchecked generative AI, like the fake Biden call, threatens voter confidence.
The most fundamental, important thing that I perceive in my role as Secretary of State is to make sure that an election is not messed up, that the voters believe and know that it was run fairly and accurately to the highest standards possible. And if we lose that, it will be very, very hard to get it back.
In New Hampshire, lawmakers are working to require that political advertising within 90 days of an election disclose if audio, still images, or video have, quote, been manipulated or generated by artificial intelligence technology and depicts speech or conduct that did not occur. Scott Stearns, VOA News.
I'm Elizabeth Lee. We'll see you next time for The Inside Story.